The leverage which they have over the control over the Strait of Hormuz is really at the southern end, and it comes from three particular islands. General Mattis used to overlay Iran onto a map of Texas. And the first thing that you know about Iran from that is Iran is big. It's 2.4 times the size of Texas. It's the 17th largest country in the world. It is not an easy country to invade because it's protected by its mountains. It is an easy country because of waterways to do raids or to potentially hold some of the islands. But the notion of major forces going into Iran is just not credible in the time frame that it would take to assemble a force. To build the force, you need somewhere to put that force, access basing and overflight, as we call it. And given what's occurred in the last 19 days already, I just don't think the Gulf states will do that. And of course, the border that you would have to go over would it have to be somewhere from the north or from Afghanistan. That is not reasonable. In a sense, you've got this thing which I've often mentioned in relation to Ukraine about Tolstoy's two greatest warriors, which are time and patience. Who has the time to do a Marine Expeditionary Unit, and do America have the patience? And the reason I say that is to put a Marine Expeditionary Unit on the ground would be an amphibious operation. Amphibious operations are the most complex operations that you can probably do. And of course, you need a number of precursor operations which would need to take place. So what would you need to do to enable a amphibious operation to take place? Well, firstly, you'd have to be sure that the subsurface threat of both submarines and mini-submarines has been negated. We think that the Kilo-class submarines, which is always the thing in war games, have been rendered inoperable at Bandar Abbas. We're not so sure of the mini-subs. Then in terms of the surface fleet, you'd have to make sure that both the fast attack craft and fishing vessels, which may be used for surveillance, are also knocked out of the water. But the real one is, when I was in CENTCOM, it used to be said that ships are fooled to fight a fort. That was very impactive in terms of the main reason, for example, that the carriers are in the North Arabian Sea and not in the beyond the Strait of Hormuz, is because the risk to the carriers if they were tried to transit the Strait of Hormuz. And the fort today is really the drones and anti-ship missiles which the Iranians have. We think that the Iranians started with 70,000 drones. They've used 3,500, 4,000. We don't know how many have been written off in sort of combat conditions from the American air power. But unless you can guarantee that that's taken care of, along with the coastal defense cruise missiles, then you've got a real problem of potentially going beyond a risk to a gamble. The leverage which they have over the control over the Strait of Hormuz is really at the southern end, and it comes from three particular islands which together form what they call the Persian pincers. And those islands are Kashum, which has got major military and missile hub for the Iranians, along with Greater and Lesser Tumbay. Now, all those are military outposts which give this surveillance and attack framework for the Iranians. So you would have to get rid of all those three, Greater and Lesser Tum, or create the conditions for an amphibious landing if you were to even attempt it. And I think the best analogy in the last few years is, of course, in the Black Sea. Ukraine managed to do sea denial and really move the Russian fleet all the way out of the Black Sea towards Novorossiysk. Now, it may be that the GCC countries would come into play in some of the ability to take on that Greater and Lesser Tumbay and Qasem Island. But at the moment, there is no indication that the GCC countries are doing anything other than a defensive operation. Abu Musa and Greater and Lesser Tumbay have always been disputed islands with the UAE, and indeed they were seized by Iran just prior to the formation of the UAE, prior to 1971. The hostage is going to be the cost of a barrel of oil. If the infrastructure in the Gulf is destroyed and a barrel of oil goes to $150 to $200, that is something where President Trump, given that the midterm elections are coming up, would be absolutely decimated, and the Republicans would probably be wiped out. He can't allow that to happen. He needs an off ramp of some sort of victory. Now, if you go back to two of the original military objectives, which were to destroy the Iranian nuclear program and to destroy their ability to use ballistic missiles, alongside, of course, a third objective, which was to negate the ability of Iran to project power. If he could do certainly the first two, he could sort of give that as a victory. But of course, military objectives are not what war is fought for. Wars are fought for political objectives. First reason is geography. Second reason is dispersion. And the third reason is you need absolutely tip top intelligence. All those three things at the moment, I think, are resistors to those happening. And you would need precision on all of those for it to be successful. We're not only talking about one site, we're talking about multiple sites. So that is a huge risk. It doesn't mean you couldn't do it, but you absolutely need to understand the geography, the dispersion, and you need pinpoint intelligence for that to be successful. I think the Kurds and the Baluchis, because there are two kind of always been sort of minor insurgencies around the peripheries of Iran, which is a big country, as I've said, is a slight red herring. There will always be attacks in Baluchistan, there will be attacks in Kurdistan, and from every so often there's a bombing campaign against both the Baluchis and the Kurds. They are peripherals in the periphery from an Iranian perspective. It is maintaining security of the key cities, which is the key thing for the IRGC and the Basij. They would be prepared for those peripheral areas to be sort of semi-independent in terms of the current war, because that is not where the power lies with the Iranian regime. So the notion of the Kurds spearheading something in the way that was the spearhead in Syria is just not credible. When you look at the time factor, which may be that there's only a certain length of time given the economic problem which would arise from greater cost of barrels of oil and stuff, and the political cost to Trump. So it could be that the clock is already ticking on some sort of cessation of the conflict, and this is really the difference between what Trump said very early on, that framed the war as easy because of US firepower, and General Kane framed it different, that it would take some time with high intensity operations, which would take something like 4 to 5 weeks. It may be that you've got 4 to 5 weeks as the time frame before things start fraying around the edges in terms of the GCC countries putting pressure on President Trump to stop the war.